Job, if you would, Job 29. Job chapter 29. I want you to see this. When I saw this the first time, I was like, wow, that's amazing. I get this mindset of what is righteousness. It's such a church term. It's a religious term. We say righteousness. But what does Job say about righteousness? Job chapter 29. It's starting in verse 7 and it goes through verse 17, but I want to jump to verse 14 first. So Job 29, verses 7 through 17. But in the middle of all what Job was talking, he's talking about himself and what he had done. And in the middle of all this, in verse 14, it says, Job says, I put on righteousness as my clothing, and justice was my robe and my turban. So you see again this?
Where is this?
Oh, it says Job chapter 29, verse 14, specifically. He says, I put on righteousness as my clothing, and justice was my robe and my turban. He's clothing himself with righteousness. What does that mean? You know, if we're understanding righteousness is saying, well, clothing myself with right relationship with God, it sounds, okay, you know, putting on. But Job is talking, he explains what it means here. Now, what does he start in verse 7? I don't want to go through every single thing, but he says, when I went to the city, to the gate of the city and took my seat in the public square, the young men saw me and stepped aside. The old men rose to their feet. And he goes on about how he was honored so much. And why does he say that? He said, I was honored by all these people, all these great people in the gate, which is like the place where all the nobles are, and all the poor people are in the gate of the city. And he says, why? Verse 12, because I rescued the poor who cried for help, and the fatherless who had none to assist them. Those who were dying blessed me. I made the widow's heart sing. And he says what he says, I put on righteousness as my clothing. Justice was my robe and my turban. I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy. I took up the case of the stranger. I broke the fangs of the wicked and snatched the victims from their teeth. Righteousness. Pursuing righteousness. Now I would come and I would assert that Jesus is talking about this kind of righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like taking up God's cause.
That's right.
Doing good to those that are in need. This whole verse, I get tingles. I just like reading this and see what Job is talking about righteousness. Now we can contextualize this, so to speak, put it in our terms. Who are those that are in need? Nancy is in need. Families are in need that we know. But Job is talking about he was proactively seeking out the right action that God had, what God desired. And what does Jesus say? Blessed are those, we could say persecuted for righteousness, or I'm going to take it in my translation that I've heard. Those that are pursuing after righteousness, like Isaiah 51:1 says. Those that are seeking God. Saying, blessed are you. God favors those that are seeking after him, that are doing his will. Those make up the kingdom of heaven. And that's what it says right at the end, doesn't it? That those that are seeking after righteousness make up the kingdom. Yeah. So I'm challenging you, and I'll try to I'll put on my notes and things. If you want to read more into it, there's so much, as you can see. We only went through like 3, 4. And thank you for your graciousness. It went quite a long time. Dakota, I know you're sleeping in there. It's all right. It's all right. We'll bring a pillow next time. I just want to say, if you consider yourself a disciple of Jesus, we need to line ourselves up with what Jesus is talking about. Because we are putting ourselves as disciples in that place, right? We had, at the very beginning, we're putting ourselves there. It's been said that the Beatitudes are really describing what it means to be a disciple. That's what it means. So read through every single one of these things. I'm asking you now, what you read here, caring for those that are in need. And you go back, the pure in heart, you know, from the Psalms. Who can ascend the hill of the Lord? Who can go into his presence? But those who are pure in heart, clean hands and a pure heart. Those who have not defiled their ways. Those that are seeking peace, bringing wholeness and restoration and reconciliation. Our life, is my life, is Jake Davis's life lining up with that? That's what we need to ask. Is your life lining up with what Jesus is talking about? Because that's what he's defining here. Are we disciples of Jesus or are we not? And if we are, we need to look at this and say, Jesus is saying to us, blessed are these. These are what God approves of. So if you're challenging this, if you're feeling like, I don't even know, I don't know where I'm at with the Lord right now, I feel like I'm just kind of doing my own thing, then dedicate yourself right now. Do something about it, because we're here together, and we're reading this, and we see what God's saying, and he gives us every chance to do what he's saying to do. Like I said, God gives us second chances, but who says amen for the third, fourth, and fifth chances, right? Does that song in Jonah, like, right, the VeggieTales movie? It's like, God, there's second chances. I'm sitting there like, man, what about 34th chances, you know? You should sing it a few more numbers out, you know. But what are we going to do? So look at this. Look at even what we read tonight, righteousness. Are you living out righteousness in your life? Are you seeking out what God's will is? Are you trembling at His word? Can you live by faith and steadfastness in the Lord? So find something. Take this. Don't leave this behind. Take something out of this and say, I'm not just going to sit back and say it's an attitude. So what did He say at the beginning? Is it an attitude? It's an action. Trembling at His word. Doing what God says. There's action. So to sit back and say, well, eventually God's going to give me this. God's going to give me patience. You know, I always love the fruit of the Spirit. Give me a place to challenge me to help me to learn patience. So find a place. Peace. Seeking out peace, righteousness. Choose one. And let's keep ourselves accountable to becoming more like Jesus, a disciple of Jesus. We should be His disciples. We are His disciples. So let's live it out.